and he was met by a group of ships who they pulled alongside of his plane, and they ended up taking him, landing him, and claimed that they were the Ariani and that they were the inhabitants of the inner earth, and they would take him to meet with the king of the world, I believe is what they called him. And so Admiral Byrd was then taken to meet with this inner earth king, who gave him a message to bring back to the President of the United States. So here he comes back to the President of the United States to give him the message. And what the message basically was is that they wanted our government to stop with the nuclear testing. They didn't want them to pursue the nuclear because that would be the destruction of the planet, which would also be the destruction of the inner earth. So they wanted to set up a meeting with the powers that be of our government to let them know that, yes, they exist. They wanted to have treaties or whatever it was. And next thing you know, they sent out ships over, sightings were over Los Angeles. There were sightings over the White House, whatever. And then our government started taking a shot at all these UFO type of vehicles in response to, their goodwill. They were trying to stop the madness at that point. So interesting enough, Byrd, when he came back, shared this information on the journey into the North Pole, and this was what was cited by him in his secret diary that years later that was passed on, that only came out years later.
So didn't they the government mounted a big expedition to the South Pole shortly after that, sent a bunch of warships and aircraft carrier and all. I can't remember what it was. 10,000
Yes.
men.
Yeah, with dirigibles that were designed to be able to get through the ice, so that way they could get to the South Polar opening. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right, and they got their asses handed to them, and they came running back with like the dog with his tail between his legs.
There are very few ships came back from that. Isn't that the
I think that they lost 2 or 3 ships. I can't remember what it was.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that during World War II, like 50,000 submarines were like unaccounted for. They don't know what happened to them, where they went. So could very well be that they went to the South Pole, to this new Swabenland, or to the polar openings, and this is why the U.S. was going down there, because it was a secret place that the Nazis had found.
Yeah. The story just gets more and more amazing the more you start digging into this. Did you have you ever come across Brooks Agnew's stuff?
I saw some of his things. I know some people like James Gilliland and other people who know him, and I've never met him personally. I have friends who know him, but his big thing that I was told was that he wanted to put an expedition together to go up to the North Pole to actually find the opening at the North Pole.
Yeah, and he also traveled around the world looking for evidence of this and stories. And it just seems that the more you look into this, the more you find evidence. But there's a great trying to remember their name. There's a father and son from South Africa, and they have a book called The Land with No Horizon. And they do the whole scientific look into this. And from what I heard in their interview, when they start talking about, I don't know if you're familiar with the shadow zone when you have an earthquake, how it rings still, and that's only possible if it's hollow. If it's solid the way they teach us in school, that wouldn't happen.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, and what gets me frustrated with school is that they teach it as fact when it's only a theory, because they've never proven. But if you give them any other theory, they're like, oh no, that's impossible.
Well, that's basically it's suppression of to be a free thinker. When you take away someone's ability to reason and to analyze things, then you're making them robotic, and you're just telling them, you're dumbing them down. Actually, is really what you're doing.
Take the creativity away.
Exactly. Once you take the creativity away, it's like you give somebody lined paper. Give somebody regular sketching paper with crayons, and rather than give them lined paper, because all of a sudden they'll open up their mind, they'll open up their creativity, where the beauty of life will actually come out, and answers will begin to appear. But when you give somebody canned responses, or you tell teachers, for example, this is the curriculum, this is what you're going to teach, you cannot deviate from this path, you have to teach the Darwinism theory, you have to teach this and that, you're not giving people at least a chance to think until they get to high levels of education. And then those professors are tenured, and the last thing they want to do is say anything that upsets the apple cart, because then they won't have a job.
Yeah, they're tenure.
Yeah, I've heard stories where students wanted to do research into the hollow earth, and they would say, now if you want to graduate,
well, there you go.
Now if you want to get your master's.
Well, you have to be, I have a friend who is writes for a major paper, who had interviewed me, and he commended me on some of the things I was doing. And he says, you sound like me, like a journalist. And I was kidding around with him. I says, no, the difference is I'm outside of the box. I could say these things that you would get fired for.
What did he say to you?
He laughed. He agreed. He's not going to really, but he's just like, point well taken. But the point is, it's going to take someone who's outside of the box to bring up the tough questions and put it out there for people to think about. I mean, just to ask those questions. What if? The possibility. Right now, we're not getting the possibilities. We're just getting okay, it's black or white, and it fits inside here, and this is what it is, and you have to accept it. We're going to cookie cut this. And every website, everybody's going to have the same information. It's going to be canned, the same response, and you'll accept it. You'll eat it like it's Purina dog chow. Well, you know what? That's not what people need. People need to be given a lot of different avenues to go down to be able to make reasonable assessments and judgments based on the information. And if you suppress the information, it makes it difficult.
Yeah.
Well, the internet is really opening a lot of doors for a lot of people. And there's so much information out there now that is accessible. Stuff that's been suppressed for a long time.
But also, too, you got to remember, just like you have the National Enquirer, you have people that can tweak the truth, and all of a sudden what might sound like it's, really, really good might be just a disinformation group putting stuff out there just to throw you off, the track.
Absolutely. You definitely have to have your discernment mechanism going at all times.
Well,
you got to look at stuff. Yeah. Get Ramon. Yeah.
And I was going to say, there's a saying I love saying, which is, if I have a room and I have an inch of gold in that room, and then I cover it with 6 inches of crap, nobody's going to stick their hand in there to look for the gold. So it's the same thing. You wrap the truth with lies, so you don't even know what's true and what's a lie.
Well, that's very true. Hitler once said, "The bigger the lie, the easier to believe."
Yeah.
So, we've got some major stuff that's happened in this country recently in the last decade that defies common sense, but it is, put out there in a way that it is so unbelievable that people say, "All right, I give up, I'll accept it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That or they're so brainwashed by the square tube in the living room that they believe everything that comes out of that thing.
Well,
and that's all controlled. So.
Well, if you want to tune in, we started this hour talking about spirituality. In order to tune in, you must tune out from all these distractions, we'll call them, that tell you how to think, what to do, when to do it, how to say it. And if you can do that, you can separate that and go within, then that's when you're going to open up the doorway to the answers that you seek, whether you're a researcher, whether you're looking for answers. They will come because you'll be putting it in to your higher self, which will get you what you want just by going within, because you already have the answers. Just like in the Wizard of Oz, where they told Dorothy, you already had it already. Well, we have it already. We just have to go and say, okay, now where do I look? And because the difference between knowledge and wisdom, guys, is knowing what to do next. You need to know what the process is. Once you establish the process, you can then control the process, because you're the screenwriter. This is the drama of your life. You're the director, producer. You're the one who's controlling this. And if you control it, then you're the one who should say, let's do a timeout. Let me reassess. And if you step out of it and become the conscious observer, the third party, and it's not really happening to you, you're watching it happen, almost like a Zen Buddhist approach, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
this kind of goes right in the direction where I definitely wanted to ask you a question that we ask most of our guests. What is your definition of consciousness, and how does it affect our world?
My definition of consciousness, okay, that's very interesting. A lot of people draw their definition of consciousness based on their religious beliefs, what their parents teach them, and what they learn in churches and organizations. And so initially, when you start out, at least I did in the process, I was a devout Christian at the time, and from my parents, but I realized that I had to cut the umbilical cord when I realized there were things that just didn't make sense in the philosophies that I had been studying and learning.
You mean you're not a devout Christian anymore?
Well, in a different way. I believe, I follow the golden rule, and I think we all should. If we only follow one rule, Ramon, it's, treat people the way you want to be treated, and I think, we'd solve all the wars.
Yeah.
Because, you wouldn't hurt yourself. Why would you hurt somebody else? It's a reflection on you. When you do something mean to someone, or say something, whether it's opinionated or you do something, it's really your shadow. It's really, you're having a problem, and you're reflecting on another God-like human being, and you need to check yourself at the door when you do that. When you talk about higher consciousness, I mean, we are all, I believe, and we're going to be finding out, we're all co-creators with God. And I think that's where our super consciousness comes from this higher presence, which gives us the ability to create the things on this plane as we exist in the 3D and manifest them from this thinking stuff that we put into our minds. And by using that, we're able to create and mold what it is that we put in our consciousness and bring these things back to us, hopefully in a timely manner, and be able to see them manifest in earthly form.
Yeah. That makes
Well
sense.
said. Well said.
Well, I mean, for example, when you guys wanted to create this TV show, you wanted to host this show, it had to start with a desire, a passion, and an idea. The thinking stuff process took place. You guys molded it. Next thing you know, here we are on Conscious TV. I mean, the same process that it took to create this thing is every creation on Earth. Something thought had to be put out there, and it had to be nurtured. It had to be done in a way where it could create itself. It just didn't happen just like the Big Bang Theory. Something of intelligent design, I guess that's the word I'm looking for, to create this beautiful world that we live in.
So do you look at it as this being becoming self-aware? The first time it became self-aware was the creation, or the beginning of the creation of the universe, is the becoming of self-aware?
Well, I believe that this omnipresent creator created many, many universes, and I think